Well, good afternoon everybody and welcome to AFP headquarters. Thank you for coming down at short notice. In late 2015, I announced that the AFP was introducing targets within our workforce to improve our diversity performance, particularly as it relates to gender. I also announced that in order to ensure that the AFP could be as successful as possible in attaining those targets, that we had engaged Elizabeth Broderick, the former Sex Discrimination Commissioner for the Commonwealth, to work with the AFP to identify and remove any barriers that have stopped the AFP from achieving our objectives. For the past 6 months, Elizabeth and her team have covered the length and breadth of the AFP. They've been speaking to members and exploring our systems, our frameworks and our processes. Now today I'm releasing that report. The AFP has many systems in place designed to maximise our chances of achieving genuine diversity and a healthy workplace. Legislation, as well as our internal guidelines, provide the frameworks for us to be successful, but we have not been successful. 46% of women and 20% of men who were surveyed by Elizabeth and her team reported that they have been subjected to sexual harassment in the AFP in the last 5 years. 64% of AFP staff who responded to the survey said that they have been subjected to bullying and intimidation in the last 5 years. This report has found that while the frameworks exist, our internal cultures, our internal practices are holding us back. On some levels, this culture is the result of biases, both unconscious and conscious bias, that simply do not allow our internal frameworks to succeed. But this report has also exposed cultures that have allowed these poor behaviours and have countered the efforts by the AFP to achieve the diversity targets we should. But they are not the most troubling aspects of the report and the findings from Elizabeth. The report has exposed pockets of behaviour that I can only describe as criminal. Sexual harassment and sexual assault has no place in the AFP. Yet 2% of the surveyed staff said that they have been subjected to actual or attempted sexual assault in the last 5 years. All of this ends today. For the AFP to maximise our potential, we must embrace diversity. Diversity in all of its forms. Diversity of gender, diversity of culture, diversity of education, diversity of thought and alike. We must embrace them all. So to all AFP members, both past and present, who have been subjected to these behaviours, I unreservedly apologise. This behaviour is not acceptable. We can do better and we will do better. Now I'm sure that some of this is not, of course, unique to the AFP. Society has to address these issues as well. But the pace of change in society is slow. And the AFP has the opportunity, the AFP has the obligation to show leadership in this regard. The AFP will implement all of the recommendations proposed by Elizabeth and her team. They are challenging and they will be uncomfortable for the organisation. But for real change, for sustainable change, for change that is meaningful, we need to be made uncomfortable. I've just come from speaking with the entire leadership team of the AFP, and I've sought their commitment to implement the changes necessary. They understand the role that they play, and they are wholeheartedly united in us achieving these objectives. The AFP is full of talented, motivated, enthusiastic members who are proud of the work that we do. In fact, the AFP is a very proud organisation. And it's because of that I know that this is the start of a very positive journey for the AFP. Now I want to thank Elizabeth and her team for the work that they have done. I also want to thank the many AFP members for their incredibly frank views. I want to thank them for participating, I want to thank them for trusting, I want to thank them for embracing the process. As well as releasing this report today, I'm also announcing that from today I've created a new division within the AFP. This division will oversee the implementation of the recommendations. It will report directly to me, not just on the recommendations and how we are going against the implementation, but about the change that it will actually bring about in the organisation. Assistant Commissioner Ray Johnson, one of my senior officers, will lead this division. Assistant Commissioner Johnson will have complete authority. He will operate with my imprimatur and no part of the AFP will be off limits to him. He will also oversee a new reporting mechanism within the AFP that will create a safe place for all AFP members, both past and present, to bring forward behaviours that are inconsistent with our values, that are inconsistent with my expectations and the expectations of my leadership team. Now, many of the incidents that have been referred to in this report and that Elizabeth has referenced, or those that have been raised personally with Elizabeth, have either been done anonymously or done in a way where the victim has not wanted to come forward with their details. I understand why that has been the case. We have not done as well as we should have in the past. But I ask all of those members, both past and present, to reconsider bringing them forward. The processes that we have put in place from today will be different. The processes we have put in place from today will ensure their confidentiality, will ensure they are not re-victimised every time they tell their story. In a minute, I'm going to take questions and I'll also hand over to Elizabeth. But I want to say this as well. As much as this report contains a lot of negative reflection of the AFP, I am not being negative. This is an opportunity for change. This is an opportunity for us to be better. This is an opportunity for the AFP, a good organisation, to become even better than we are today. And I welcome that opportunity. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Andrew. I'm pleased to stand here beside Commissioner Andrew Colvin today as he launches the report, Cultural Change, Gender Diversity and Inclusion in the Australian Federal Police. I have to say it's been an absolute privilege to engage with many AFP members, members that I've met during the course of a project, members who served and protect our nation and communities, often at great personal risk. It's been also a privilege to work with Commissioner Colvin, who is a courageous leader. Not only was he prepared to release this internally, but today he releases the results externally. He gave my team and I unfettered access to his members and the organisation, and he's accepted all the findings of the report as challenging and disturbing as some of them are. It's not an easy task for an organisation to hold the mirror up, to identify areas that require change. It takes courage to accept that some aspects of a culture are not as you would like, that on occasion, service for some has come at an unacceptable personal cost. So I want to strongly commend Commissioner Colvin for taking this bold step forward, for allowing an independent examination of the Australian Federal Police. Over the last decade or so, I have worked across many male-dominated environments, including command and control, helping them examine their culture, its impact on women, and the link to operational effectiveness and performance. And having studied these environments, I'm not surprised by what I've found within the AFP. Those aspects of the culture that do require strengthening are the ones I would have expected. The concentration of women in roles that don't lead to senior positions, the lack of women in leadership, the difficulties for both men and women accessing flexible work, and the challenges faced by women trying to fit in and prove themselves are common themes that I've seen in many organisations before. However, the very high levels of sexual harassment and bullying evidenced in the report demand urgent action. These behaviours not only have a devastating impact on individuals, but they divide teams and ultimately they will undermine an organisation's operational effectiveness. Swift action is required to hold perpetrators to account. Equally, a robust system that provides support for victims and which responds sensitively and expeditiously is needed. As you will see in the report, AFP members who have suffered these behaviours do not believe that the current complaints mechanism is delivering. Overall, I made 24 recommendations for reform. As the Commissioner has stated, he is committed to implementing every one of those recommendations, and I have to say that process has already begun. At the heart of these recommendations is the necessity for the creation of a diverse and inclusive AFP, an AFP that has the diversity of talent and expertise to meet the challenges of the future, one where both men and women can thrive equally, and one that is ultimately more capable and operationally effective. I am optimistic that under the current leadership of Commissioner Andrew Colvin, the AFP will address every one of the challenges outlined in my report. I sense a readiness by the organisation to take bold action to strengthen culture. As one member of the AFP recently told me, she said, "I'm passionate about the AFP. That's why I care about the culture and want it to be as positive as it can be for all of us." In finishing, I just want to thank the many people who've shared their insights, have shared their stories and their wisdom. This report is stronger because of those contributions. I am confident the AFP will continue as a powerful and effective law enforcement agency, a powerful and influential national institution. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. Happy to take any questions.
Mr. Colvin, your final point about urging people to come forward with,
Yes.
with such experiences, can we assume from that that you are keen for criminal charges to be pursued where that's appropriate? Can you just talk a little bit about what the process would be for that?
Okay, well, I think the report tells us many things, and the strength of the report is that people have been prepared to come forward and talk about their experiences. Elizabeth and her team created a safe place for them to do that, and often that meant anonymity about what they had to say. But as Elizabeth has just said, there's a lack of confidence in the current mechanism. So we are putting in place from today a different mechanism, a safe place where people can get counselling, advice, assistance as well. If there are criminal behaviours, let me be very clear, if there are criminal behaviours, they will be dealt with criminally. We have to take a stand on this. We cannot be an organisation of law enforcement integrity if within our own organisation we have people who are flouting the laws. So to the extent that people are prepared to come forward, then we will take action. But I think a lot of this is about looking forward. And my experience is, and Elizabeth's advice to me is, in many parts, the organisation, the members just want to see change. They love this organisation, they're proud of what we do, and they just want to know that it's going to change, and it will change.
Have any officers been put under investigation, though, from this process for bullying, harassment, criminal behaviour? Have they been disciplined or dismissed?
Well, most of what Elizabeth's work has done so far has been anonymous. So now we'll start the process that if people are prepared to bring forward those complaints, we'll look at them. But again, this is about creating an environment in the AFP where people are prepared to do that. So at this stage, no.
Criminal behaviour was identified in the report by that 2% figure. So 2% of
That's right.
said they had actually been raped, actually been sexually harassed, rather than the 2% figure. Have you got a number of how many women we're talking about?
Well, I mean, that survey was undertaken by 30%, so it's statistically appropriate. It's it's relevant. 2% equates a couple of hundred, less than 200, but over 100 people in the organisation. Whether that's a straight extrapolation, I don't know, Keith. But we're talking about a number of people, male and female, and we shouldn't just assume that this is only females that are saying that they've been subjected to sexual assault or attempted sexual assault. They've had the courage to come forward and name themselves in a survey. We'll now see whether they're prepared to come forward.
Elizabeth said she wasn't surprised at the high level of sexual assault and bullying that she found in the report. Were you surprised, or was it what you expected?
I was surprised and I'm disappointed.
Can I just add to that? I didn't say I wasn't surprised by the high level. I said I wasn't surprised that sexual harassment happens in the organisation, because in every command and control organisation I've looked at, it's a reality of the culture. But yeah, we were both very surprised about the level.
Ms. Broderick, is it a particular part of the AFP where you saw specific instances of sexual assault, sexual harassment?
No, and I should reiterate, our I suppose investigation was a broad brush. We didn't investigate any individual incident, any individual matter. It was to look broadly at where the strengths of a culture were, but where there were areas that need to be strengthened. So there wasn't a particular area that was particularly poor. The issues of bullying and sexual harassment are across the entire organisation.
Ms. Broderick, what lessons and what similarities do you find with your work with the Australian Defence Force? Can you bring any of those lessons across to the AFP?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the work that we did with the ADF actually showed many similarities in terms of the thematic elements: sexual harassment, sexual assault, flexible work, lack of women at leadership level, those types of things. And there's a lot of things that we learnt there, which I think will be appropriate for the AFP as well. But having said that, the AFP, with the Commissioner and the leadership team that's on board now, are absolutely committed to stepping up. So I didn't come to the AFP after an individual incident. I came at their invitation as an independent expert to help them step up, and I think, all credit to the AFP for doing that.
Is the
Commissioner,
internal
you put a
culture,
time frame in for gender equality of a decade. What's your time frame for stamping out some of this behaviour?
The time frame is as short as possible for stamping out the behaviours. We can, while Elizabeth has cautioned us not to rush to conclusion, not to rush to implementation, when it comes to sexual harassment, sexual assault, bullying, intimidation, there is zero tolerance to that in the AFP. So I haven't thought about a time frame because I don't want to put a measure on this. This is ongoing. This will exist well past the current term of the executive of the AFP and will indoctrinate a new culture in the AFP.
Because coming back to your previous question, one of the things that we learnt from the ADF is that for people to listen to the stories, that will take some time. Listen to the stories and then reflect on what part have I played in creating the culture that exists today. Because everyone works in the AFP creates the culture that exists today. So what is it then that I need to do and step up? But on the issues of sexual harassment, bullying, urgent action is required.
Ms. Broderick, you said you looked at this with a very broad brush. Are you able to reveal to us in any detail some of the cases of sexual harassment or bullying that you had people come and complain to you about?
Well, the report really discloses quite a number. And what I think is powerful about the report is it actually includes the voices of those who have experienced sexual harassment, bullying, exclusion, those types of things, because often they're the voices that are silenced in an organisation. So I think that's where the power of a report is. Many of them are included in there.
is the internal culture comparable to the ADF, Ms. Broderick?
There's a lot of similarities, as you would see in command and control environments, but the AFP, I think, there are a number of key differences as well. Both organisations, I have to say, it's been a great privilege in my professional life to work with both of these organisations because I don't often see in civilian organisations the deep commitment to actually service, which I see in these two organisations. So there will be some similarities, but of course the nature of the work is quite different. The AFP much more office-based in some areas, although of course ACT policing is out on the road. But yeah, they're both unique.
What can you tell us about the internal culture of the AFP that actually has given rise to these surprisingly high incidents?
Well, what I can tell you is that it's an organisation which has a proud almost 40-year history, but it's deeply rooted in a male way of being. And that's what's made the organisation strong in the past. But I think the organisation hasn't maybe understood as well that to move into the future requires the active and intentional inclusion of women and other diverse groups. And because that hasn't been as well understood, there are some behaviours which happen in all male groups which actually are no longer acceptable, are no longer okay. So I think that's the great opportunity from the work that the Commissioner and his leadership team are doing. The opportunity from this report is to signal that actually things are going to change in the future. This will be a culture which is more inclusive of women and where men and women can thrive equally.
Commissioner, there's been a number of raids.
Have you felt, Mr. Colvin, that too much of a voice club there is your country ranks?
Well, I think the report makes it very clear that it is, and I think incumbent on all of us, particularly those in senior management, but anyone who's been in the AFP for a long time, is to stop, to pause and to reflect and to go, where along my career could I have done better? Where can I now re-look at things that have happened in my career and look at it through the lens perhaps of somebody who wasn't getting the advantages that perhaps I was getting, that wasn't getting the same lived experience that I was. I think in truth, we have to accept the fact that yes, there have been instances where throughout our careers have probably benefited from the fact that this was a male-dominated culture.
Have you personally witnessed examples of bullying or sexual discrimination? I'm talking you personally and people you've worked with.
On reflection, when you look back through the lens of this report, yes.
What sort of, any examples?
Look, I don't want to get into examples, but I think it's become indoctrinated into some of our thinking. It's that male-dominated culture that we have. It's become normalised behaviour. And it may not be unique to the AFP, but I'm responsible for the AFP, so this is what we're tackling.
Commissioner, there's been a raid in Sydney on counter-terrorism operation this morning. Can you give us any details about the nature of that threat and the nature of
Happy to come back and take some questions off topic. Can we perhaps exhaust?
I might just ask you, you said that this stops now. What's your direct message to AFP personnel who have engaged in the harassment and abuse of other people?
Well, that it stops now, and that behaviour is not appropriate, and that they have to curb their behaviour. We all have to curb their behaviour. It starts at the top. The message that I send through my words and my actions, probably my actions more loudly than my words, have to give a different environment, have to make it very clear that this stops today. I've spoken via a video message to the whole organisation, and I've spoken in person to my leadership group. We brought them in from all around Australia, and I've just spoken to them. They know very well what the expectations are.
What does it say about the AFP's willingness to look at itself in past years? I mean, this is kind of surprising, I think, probably to most people that it's as high as it is. I mean, how has this sort of been allowed to go on unnoticed or unexamined?
Well, that's a good question, because I think most people would look at the AFP and say, rightly say, that we are a modern, progressive organisation who have been more than welcome to external scrutiny and opening ourselves up for people to examine us. I think the organisation will be shocked at these findings. I think the public will be shocked at these findings. I don't think it says that we're not a good organisation who is very operationally capable, because we are, and our results continue to show that. But what I think it says is we've taken our eye off the ball, and we haven't focused as much as we should on our organisational health while we've been making sure we do the job. Any other questions about the review? All right, thank you, Elizabeth. Not much I can say. Yes, there's some operational activity underway in Sydney at the moment. It does not relate to any ongoing threat to the community, but it's ongoing, so there's not much more I can say at this stage.
Was there a need for urgency to have these raids carried out today?
No, it was just part of an ongoing operation investigation that we've got in Sydney.
Is there any threat to the public?
No, there's no threat to the public.
Is this one-off? Are you expecting more?
Look, I think like all of our counter-terrorism investigations, they tend to roll on. This is another one of those. This investigation, as I say, it's not a threat to the public. It relates to terrorism financing, and while it's ongoing, I think I'll confine my comments to that.
Do you believe charges will be laid?
Too early to say.
A year ago, the Defence Department referred the allegations from Afghanistan to the
Yes.
SAS, we're all the same. Are you in a position to sort of an update on where that investigation is up to?
Look, the matter's ongoing, so I think it's best that I not comment on it. We do have it. It's an open investigation, and the matter is ongoing.
The fact that it's sort of taken a year with no action, no outcome, does that suggest it's probably nothing going to come of it?
I think it suggests the complexity of the environment that the AFP operates in. We're talking about alleged offences happening in another country in time of war, and these are complicated matters. Any other questions? All right, guys, thanks very much for coming along. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.